Hello, my name is David Penner, and this is my Module 12 assignment for EDL 850 over tort liability. In this assignment, we're asked to define what tort is, and it's a civil wrong for which remedies may be obtained, usually in the form of damages, and that definition is given to us by Black's Law Dictionary. Also later on, it goes on to identify two specific types of torts. The first one is intentional torts, which is an offense that's committed by an individual who intends to do harm to another person or knows that and understands that their actions may also cause harm to that individual. The second type is negligent torts, where there's a failure by a person to act in a reasonable way, as they would be by duty or by law, and what a reasonable person how they would handle that situation in a similar instance. Usually in court cases that involve schools, it's usually negligent torts that are going to be brought up in the lawsuit. In this assignment, we're asked to research 5 court cases and go through and identify reactive measures, proactive measures, and professional ethics that our school district would follow within these certain scenarios. Court case number 1 for me is Mitchell versus Cedar Rapids Community School District. In this court case, a mother of a special needs student sued the school district after her child was sexually assaulted by another student. In this court case, her child left school with an older gentleman, and this sexual assault took place off campus. However, it was supposed to be under supervision. She was supposed to be under supervision of the district in an after-school program, and there was a failure to contact the parent when she went missing. The jury then found that the school district was negligent in failing to provide adequate supervision for her daughter, and the special needs student and her family were awarded damages for the event. How our district would react to an event like this: student supervision would be put in place for this specific student, making sure that they're never left alone, especially if that other student is within the school district. And if the student did not show up to class, then the office would be notified right away and a search would begin for her. Any staff members that did not follow this policy would then be let go by the school district. Our proactive measurements that could have helped prevent this from happening would be smaller class sizes, where it's easier to identify when a student is gone, and having proper supervision of those classes. Having policies in place where we can notify parents if a student is going missing and not accounted for. And then professional ethics, just having clear policies in place for student supervision, and then also having policies in place for when students go missing, and having a protocol that is followed by the staff members at the school. In court case number 2 of Hoyam versus Manhattan Beach City School District, this is a similar court case to the first one, where once again a student goes missing from the school district. In this case, it's a 10-year-old boy. Unfortunately, as he left the school grounds, he was hit by a motorcycle at an intersection and seriously injured. The boy should have been at school that day, but left early. What the court then ruled was that the school was not liable for the boy leaving, and that he no longer fell under their ordinary care for students, and for them to be reasonably supervised. Our district, in reactive measurements of this, if a student doesn't show up for class, once again, we usually notify the office. If the office can't account for them, they begin a search that usually starts with contacting our SRO at the high school level or at the district level, and then parents would also be contacted as well. If an event like this happened where the student was actually hit and injured in an intersection, the teacher that failed to follow this policy would probably be either suspended or let go. Proactive measurements, once again, smaller class sizes make it easier for identifying when a student is gone. Hourly updates on the attendance record so that we can identify uh, from hour to hour where if a student leaves the building, and then obviously having teacher supervision policies in place as well. I put down door monitors as well, whether that's the principals at the entrance during passing periods or whether that's actually having buzzers on the doors. That would help with identifying when students are leaving the school. And then office, having them have a policy in place when they can notify the students' parents if they are missing and not accounted for. Professional ethics in this place, or in this case, we'll have supervision policies, once again, for the students that are supposed to be in school, whether that's attendance and all that, and then also missing student protocol, and making sure that that is followed and parents are contacted when a student goes missing. Court case number 3 was Choice versus YMCA of McHenry County. In this court case, we have students that are going on an overnight leadership camp at YMCA. And what they decided to do is sneak out in the early morning to go paddle boating on the river. And unfortunately, they end up fatally drowning in the paddle boats. The families of these students then go sue the school, saying that they were liable for the deaths of their children. And when this went to court, it was found that the charter school was immune from liability. Reactive measures, how our school would react to this. Once again, they would go through and make sure that all teachers know that there are clear policies for overnight trips, that the district would know that as well, those other community members. Teachers that act as supervisors know that they're responsible for the students that go on the trips and are responsible for upholding these policies. And if those policies are not followed, then teachers would be let go again. Proactive measurements, usually when we do have trips like this, we ask for additional help from parents or other staff members in order to increase the supervision of those students. There's usually a lights out policy as well that teacher has in place where they are accounting for those students as they go to bed and then as they wake up in the morning as well. And then we usually have waiver forms for any field trips or trips that are outside of the school district. Professional ethics, once again, making sure that these trip policies are followed and known by both the community members, the students, and the teachers, and then having additional supervision for these types of trips as well. Court case number 4 is Johnson Johnson versus School District of Millard. And in this court case, a mother of a student sues the school district after her child had an injury. She actually sustained a pretty big injury in which she needed 50 stitches. It came after her child had gone up to the music teacher and asked her to help with how the students were handling her during an activity, and this activity was London Bridges falling down. The teacher was found to be actually negligent in this case, and did not provide appropriate supervision in the event. She was actually writing something on the board when this injury had happened. Reactive measures in this court case, if this were to happen at our school, parents would be contacted about the incident. Nurse on site would be contacted as well in order to help attend to the students' initial needs, and then EMS would be called out to help once the injury was found to be pretty big. They would be contacted in order to help with that. The teacher that was in the classroom would be reprimanded for their lack of supervision and maybe even let go. Proactive measurements, adding additional adults to the classroom would help increase the supervision, and then also having policies in place where the students know what type of activities are appropriate and when they're appropriate. Professional ethics, once again, having clear policies of what appropriate supervision is, having policies in place in this case of what type of activities within the classroom are appropriate and when they're appropriate. I'm not a music teacher, but in the science classroom, I have similar policies to that where students know what type of activities they can do when I'm in the classroom and when I'm not in the classroom. Last court case for this module was Barrett versus USD 259. This is actually one that happened in Wichita, just down the road from Rose Hill. And in this court case, a senior football player had passed away or died at practice. The mother sued the school district after her son had passed away at the first practice of the season. The player had it had been noted that the player had complained about being very hot and not feeling well. It was then later on determined that the coaches were told about this player, held him out of drills, allowed for him to get water several times, but he still was not feeling well. And then that's when the fatal accident happened. Trial court initially found that the school and the coaches were both liable for the death of the player. However, this was brought to the Kansas Supreme Court and overturned by the Kansas Supreme Court, finding that the school and the coaches were free of charges. Reactive measures in this case, our school would go through and make sure that all coaches are aware of strict enforcement of hydration policies, making sure that we have hydration periods built into our practice plans, making sure that we follow the heat acclimation policies that are in place, specifically for those fall sports coming back and knowing that it's going to be hot outside, and then making sure that there's a player safety protocol when an incident like this does happen and who's in charge of what and how we handle that incident. Proactive measurements, once again, making sure that we have water breaks built into practice, allowing players to sit out of drills if they're not feeling well or hot. Having a trainer on site is a new one that a lot of schools are doing, so that you can have that person there to care for them that has a little bit more of that medical background. And then have an emergency protocol once again in place, so that if something does happen, we can contact the EMS and get them out. I also put down making sure that our coaches are CPR trained, as we've done that in this district just this last year. Professional ethics, once again, making sure that our coaches don't restrain players from hydrating throughout practice. I found that in this court case, these coaches did not do that. They also allowed for the student to even sit out of drills, which if you go back 20 years, that isn't necessarily the case. And then they also followed the heat acclimation policies that KSHA has in place. So those, I agree with the Kansas Supreme Court as finding that the coaches in the school was not liable in this case. This is my Module 12. Thank you.